Hello friends, this video on the fundamental unit of life part 7 is brought to you by examfear.com. No more fear from exam. Next topic which we will talk about is nucleus. Let us now see what is a nucleus. Nucleus is a spherical or oval structure near center of a cell. So when you looked at the microscopic image of the onion peel, we saw that inside every cell there was a relatively dark spot, right? So this spherical or oval structure near center of a cell is known as nucleus. So when I talk of nucleus, if you look at this animal cell, this structure is known as nucleus. It is not exactly at the center, but it is somewhere near the center, right? Okay. Similarly, in a plant cell, if you look at this orange colored structure, this one. So this is a nucleus. So it is present in both plant and animal cells. Okay. So let us look at the significance of nucleus. What is the purpose of having a nucleus inside a cell? It is the control center of the cell. So a big name, control center. Why do we call nucleus as the control center of the cell? Because it controls many activities. Like, let us have a look at that. Because it helps in movement, it helps in reproduction. So now, helping in reproduction becomes a very significant thing. As I told you in the cell theory, that cells always arise from pre-existing cells, right? So this phenomenon is known as cell division. That means one cell divides to form two cells. Again, each of them divides to form more cells, right? So this process is known as cell division, and nucleus plays the most crucial role in cell division. So that is how nucleus helps in cell reproduction. Not only cell reproduction, nucleus also helps in the movement of substances from nucleus to outside the cell, right? Which also becomes very important for the survival of the cell. So we will look at the function of the nucleus in detail, but for now you should know that because of these two very important functions, nucleus is often known as the control center of the cell or the brain of the cell. Now let us talk about eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells. So you might be wondering that while studying about nucleus, why did we suddenly jump to eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells? That's because there's a reason behind that. So when I talk of nucleus, it becomes important to talk about those cells which have a prominent nucleus and those cells which do not have a prominent nucleus, right? So that is how these two categories have been categorized. So when I talk of eukaryotic cells, they have a well-defined nuclear membrane. Like for example, outside the cell, you have a cell membrane. Similarly, outside the nucleus, you have a nuclear membrane. So in eukaryotic cells, we have a well-defined nuclear membrane, whereas in prokaryotic cells, we do not have a defined nuclear membrane. So that means in eukaryotic cells, you have a specific nuclear region where the nucleus is located. But in prokaryotic cells, you do not have a specific nuclear region because there is no defined nuclear membrane. So the contents of the nucleus is scattered here and there, right? So that is why we are discussing these two categories of cells, because they have been categorized based on a nuclear membrane. Next, in eukaryotic, we have a distinct nucleus. But in prokaryotic cells, we do not have a distinct nucleus because, as I said, everything is scattered here and there. Cell organelles are present in eukaryotic cells. In prokaryotic cells, many cell organelles are absent. In eukaryotic, most of the cell organelles, right now we have not spoken about any of the cell organelles, but generally I am saying all cell organelles will have an individual membrane of its own. All the organelles will have its own cell membrane, right? But in prokaryotic, there are many cell organelles which are not at all present. In eukaryotic cells, region bounded by nuclear membrane contains DNA and protein. As I said, that means inside the nucleus, what do we have? Inside the nucleus, we mainly have DNA and protein. But in prokaryotic cells, there is no specific region, right? So the undefined region with nucleic acids is known as nucleoid, because here the region is like a scattered region. So whichever region has more of nucleic acids, we call that region as the nucleoid. So that means in prokaryotic cells, we have nothing called nucleus, we have nothing called nuclear membrane. Instead, we have something called as nucleoid. So nucleoid is any region which has more of nucleic acids. Let us look at some of the examples. When I talk of eukaryotic cells, you can consider any example of any plant or animal cells. When I talk of prokaryotic cells, you can think of bacteria and blue-green algae cells. Because most of the cells which we see are eukaryotic, human beings or any animal or bird, so they will all be eukaryotic, where you have all cell organelles present surrounded by membranes, where you have a distinct nucleus which is surrounded by a nuclear membrane. But in prokaryotic cells, everything is vague. You do not have distinct organelles. You are not able to see the organelles specifically because they are not surrounded by any membranes. Similarly, there is no distinct nucleus. There is no nuclear membrane. So you just have some region. There is just some region which will have some nucleic acids, and that region is known as nucleoid. Right? So this is how we differentiate between eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells. So let us have a quick look at the eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells. If you look at the eukaryotic cells, this is an animal cell where you have a distinct nucleus which is surrounded by a nuclear membrane, which you can see here, right? Similarly, you have so many these different structures which you see, they are different cell organelles. So you can see specific cell organelles, each of them surrounded with its own membrane. Similarly, in a plant cell also, you see that these are the different structures. This is the nucleus which is surrounded by the nuclear membrane. Similarly, other cell organelles are also present. Whereas in case of a prokaryotic cell, if you look at this prokaryotic cell, do you see a specific nucleus? There is no specific nucleus. There is just one region which has nucleic acid. That means this region consists of nucleic acid, and we call this region as nucleoid. But again, this nucleoid will not have any fixed shape or size or any fixed location. It can be just any region where you have more of nucleic acids. That region is known as nucleoid. Correct? So here if you see inside, you do not see the cell organelles also. For example, here you see this organelle which looks like this. So you have these kind of structures, you have this kind of structures. All these things are missing here because, as I said, there are many cell organelles which are not at all present in the prokaryotic cells. Right? Okay. Now, why was it important to talk about eukaryotic and prokaryotic cells was that because when we talk about the different cell organelles, whatever we will talk about, we will be considering the eukaryotic cells most of the times, because eukaryotic cells are the ones which will have all cell organelles. Right? Let us now talk about the structure of the nucleus in eukaryotes. So this is how a nucleus look like. So now you understand why I spoke about eukaryotes and prokaryotes, because if I would have not talked about eukaryotes and prokaryotes, you would have thought that this is how the nucleus structure is in all organisms. But that is not the case, because for prokaryotes, you do not have a specific nucleus structure, because there is no nucleus, there is no nuclear membrane. So there is no specific nucleus structure. So whenever I talk of nucleus structure, I am talking about the eukaryotes. So in the eukaryotes, you have a nuclear membrane, which is the outer covering of the nucleus. So if you look at this is the outer covering. This thin red colored covering is nothing but the nuclear membrane. Now, on this nuclear membrane, you have small pores which are known as the nuclear pores. So you can see small pores here. So these pores are known as the nuclear pores. These are the pores. This yellow colored things are all pores. So now, what kind of diagram is it? Are you able to understand? It is a three-dimensional figure. It is like a ball. You imagine a ball, and let us suppose if we cut a portion of the ball just to see what is there inside the ball. So that's what we have done. It was spherical in shape. The entire nucleus along with the nuclear membrane, it was spherical in shape. So we have cut this portion just to see what is there inside. Right? So outside this outer covering of the sphere was the nuclear membrane. Now on the nuclear membrane you have small pores. Those pores are the nuclear pores. Then we have the nucleoplasm. What is the nucleoplasm? The fluid-like structure which is present inside the nucleus. That means that in the fluid-like structure which is contained inside that sphere. That is nucleoplasm. Now then you have nucleolus. What is nucleolus? So this small spherical structure which is present inside the nucleus is known as nucleolus. Right? So here if you see, this entire thing is a nucleus. Right? So in the nucleus you have this nuclear membrane outside. Inside you have a spherical structure which is the nucleolus, and the entire sphere is as such consisting of a fluid-like structure which is called nucleoplasm. Other than that, we have chromatin. So what is chromatin? Chromatin are thread-like structures which are present in the nucleoplasm. I mean all these things, because how the nucleus look like? It is just like a ball. So the outer covering of the ball is nuclear membrane. Inside the ball a fluid is present, that is nucleoplasm. Now in that nucleoplasm you have at the center in another sphere, that is the nucleolus. Okay, again in that nucleoplasm you have some thread-like structures that is called chromatin. Now from these chromatin chromosomes are formed. Okay, so here you can see there are two types of chromatin which are displayed. One is heterochromatin and one is euchromatin. Heterochromatin are those chromatins which are in green color. So heterochromatin are the one which are towards the nuclear membrane. That means the chromatin with the thread-like structures which are towards the nuclear membrane, they are known as heterochromatin. And euchromatin are the chromatin which are towards the nucleolus. So if you see here again you have some small green-like structures, green thread-like structures, right? You can see some light green thread-like structures. So they are the euchromatin. So that means the thread-like structures which are present in the nucleoplasm, they are all chromatin. The chromatin which is towards the nuclear membrane, they are heterochromatin. And the chromatin which is towards the nucleolus, that means which is towards the inside of the ball, that is the euchromatin. So now you really don't need to bother much about the two categories of chromatin, that is heterochromatin and euchromatin. For now you should just know that inside the nucleoplasm you have some thread-like structures that are known as chromatin. Now these chromatins later form chromosomes when the cell divides. So we will talk about chromosomes in one of our next slides. And then again inside the chromosomes you have DNA and protein. So these DNA, because of the presence of this DNA, nucleus becomes so much significant for reproduction of cell or for cell division, as I said, right? Because for example in all human beings, what happens? For example, there is a child. The child has some traits which are similar to his father or which is similar to his mother. So we call those traits as genetic traits. We say that he inherited this from his father, right? So how that inheritance happens? That inheritance happens because of DNA, right? And this DNA is present inside the nucleus, and this nucleus is present inside a cell. So that is why when we talk of reproduction or when we talk of cell division, the most crucial role is played by the nucleus. Correct? Okay. So I know that everything is not very much clear to you right now, but all I wanted to explain in this slide is that how the structure of a nucleus looks like. So you can understand the structure very easily by imagining a ball. You just take a football in your hand and you can understand the structure of a nucleus very easily. So the outer side, again a quick review. Outer side, nuclear membrane. On nuclear membrane you have small pores. Okay, they are called nuclear pores. Inside the ball you have a fluid filled everywhere, that is nucleoplasm. Now in that nucleoplasm you have at the center another small ball, that is nucleolus. Right? Again in the nucleoplasm you have, other than the nucleolus, you have some thread-like structures. These thread-like structures are the chromatin. Right? So these four are basically the four important structures of the nucleus. Correct? Okay. So let us go ahead and describe each of them. So when I say nuclear membrane, What is it? It is a double layered covering of the nucleus. Again, what is its purpose? To ensure protection of the nucleus. Absolutely. Then we have nuclear pores. Now, why do we have small pores on the nuclear membrane? What is the purpose of having pores on the nuclear membrane? Pore on nuclear membrane allows transfer of materials to outside, because when you have holes over the membrane, let us suppose if you have a ball, okay, you make some holes on the outer covering of the ball, then what will happen? Air can go inside and come back through the holes, right? So similar is the function of nuclear pores. So when you have pores on the nuclear membrane, these pores will actually allow transfer of materials from inside the cell to outside, as well as from outside to inside the cell. Okay, I'm sorry, not inside the cell, inside the nucleus. So the next one is nucleoplasm. So what is it? It is the fluid enclosed by the nuclear membrane, right? Then comes the nucleolus. What is the nucleolus? It is the structure embedded in nucleoplasm. So this is my nucleolus. So this spherical structure is the nucleolus. It may be one or many in number. Sometimes there is just one nucleolus inside the nucleus, but at some certain times there are many nucleolus. Nucleolus is composed of protein and RNA. What is RNA? Like how we have DNA, similarly we have another nucleic acid called RNA. So we will talk about RNA in detail. So inside this nucleolus, you have protein and RNA. Please remember these things, it will help you. Ribosome formation takes place here. So what is ribosome now? When I was talking about the different cell organelle, ribosome was one of the cell organelle, right? We will talk about ribosome in our next slides, but here what we are trying to say is ribosome is a cell organelle and ribosome is formed inside the nucleolus, right? Okay, so this is again a function of nucleolus, that it helps in the formation of ribosome, which is a cell organelle, that means which again performs a specific function. Next we have the chromatin. What are chromatin? These are thin thread-like structures which are embedded in nucleoplasm. So inside in the fluid, you will have some thread-like structures. They are called as chromatin. Now, chromatin consists of DNA, RNA, and nuclear proteins. So what is DNA? DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid. RNA is ribonucleic acid, and nuclear proteins. Now, because of the presence, so when I talk of DNA is nothing but the one which is responsible for inheritance and genetic behavior. That is DNA. So when I talk of nuclear proteins and RNA, what do? They actually help in the survival of the cell, because see, anything which is living, it needs something to survive. For example, we all human beings live, but we need food, we need water to survive. Similarly, each cell also needs some nutrients in order to survive. So those nutrients are given in the form of nuclear proteins or even RNA also helps in that. Now this chromatin exists during the resting stage of a cell. So now we are going to talk something important. As I mentioned about chromosome in one of our previous slides. So where is the chromosome now? We do not see a chromosome in this picture, right? We only see the chromatin. We can see a chromatin here. So these are the chromatins. Whatever green colored structure we see here, they are all chromatin. But there is no chromosome. So where is the chromosome? Now what happens is that when the cell is in a resting stage, what is a resting stage? That means the cell has no plans to divide right now. Correct? So that then we say that the cell is in resting stage. Now when the cell is going to divide, that means when cell division is going to take place, we say that the cell is in the dividing stage. Correct? So when the cell is in the resting stage, we can see chromatin. That means the thread-like structures are seen only when the cell has no plans to divide. Right? So then when do we see a chromosome? Chromosomes are rod-shaped structures which are formed when chromatin condenses together when the cell is about to divide. So it is somewhat like this. So let us suppose these are the chromosomes. So this is how chromosomes look like. They are like all haphazard, thin thread-like structures. So this is how chromosome looks like. So this is the resting stage. Now the same chromosome becomes, I'm sorry, this was the chromatin. So the same chromatin arrange itself in this fashion, and this is known as chromosomes. So this happens in the dividing stage, right? So that means the chromatin, which are all thin thread-like structures arranged haphazardly, arranges themselves in pairs and known as chromosomes during the dividing stage. That means when the cell has plans to divide. So we do not see chromosomes in a cell which is in the resting stage. We can see chromosomes only in the dividing stage. That means only when the cell is about to divide. So chromosomes are rod-shaped structures, as you can see here. When the thread-like structures arrange themselves together in this fashion, you get a rod-like structure. That is very, let us suppose you have thin threads, too many thin threads. When you join too many thin threads together, you get a relatively thicker structure which looks like a rod-like structure. So the same thing happens here. The thin chromatins join together to form a rod-shaped structure. So the chromosomes are formed when chromatin condenses together when the cell is about to divide. So chromosomes are formed in the dividing stage of a cell. It forms when the chromatin condenses together. What is chromosomes composed of? It consists of DNA and nuclear proteins. It has DNA and nuclear proteins, and because of the presence of DNA in chromosomes becomes the most important member which helps in cell division. So chromosomes contain information for inheritance. As I mentioned, the information of inheritance is contained in DNA. So inside DNA we have small segments. Those segments are known as genes. So from those genes the word genetic has come up. So often the doctors say, okay, sometimes we go to a doctor and we complain that I get frequent headaches. And the same thing happens to my dad also, and the same thing used to happen even to my grandfather. So the doctor says that, okay, then this is something genetic. That means this is something which is carried by the genes. Because the same genes which was there in your grandfather, some of them came to your father, again some of them came to you. So that is how the genetic information is carried over one generation to another. And the genetic information is contained in this DNA, that is deoxyribonucleic acid. Please do not bother yourself with what exactly is DNA, what exactly is RNA. You will study about the same lesson once again in class 11th, but then there we will study it in complete detail. So at this stage, that means for class 9th, all you need to know is you should be aware of the structure of the cell. You should be aware of the names of the different cell organelles. You should know the function of the different cell organelles, and you should also have some idea about the structure of the different cell organelles. That is the purpose right now. Okay, so please do not bother yourself with the exact structure and all of ribonucleic acid or deoxyribonucleic acid. Okay, so I hope everybody is clear on this so far. So we spoke about nucleus, and we spoke about quite a few things about nucleus. We spoke about the nuclear membrane, nuclear pores, nucleolus, chromatin and chromosomes. Let us now look at the significance of the nucleus. It is the control center of the cell, as I mentioned in the first slide, because it helps in reproduction, which is extremely important for a cell. At the same time, it also helps in movement of substances in and out of the cell. So it helps in movement, that is movement of ribosomes through the nuclear pores from nucleolus to cytoplasm. Now I mentioned in one of our previous slides that let us suppose if this is the nucleus and this is the nucleolus and this is my nuclear membrane. So this is the double layered nuclear membrane and this is the nucleolus. So we saw that ribosome, which is again another cell organelle, this ribosome is formed inside nucleolus. Right? Now once the ribosome is formed inside nucleolus, it has to be transported outside, right? So these ribosomes are transported outside through the nuclear pores which are present on the nuclear membrane. So if you do not have this nuclear pores, it is nuclear membrane, it is like the entire nucleus is compact. So nothing can move out from the nucleus, nothing can come into the nucleus. But because of the presence of those nuclear pores, the ribosomes which are produced inside the nucleolus can be transported from the nucleus to the cytoplasm. Right? Because outside everywhere you have cytoplasm. It also helps in cellular reproduction, that is, chromosomes contained in nucleus play a crucial role during cell division, as I mentioned before. So as I mentioned before, the main organ which takes part in who plays the crucial role in reproduction of a cell is the chromosomes, because chromosomes contain DNA and DNA contain genes, and these genes are responsible for hereditary characters. So chromosomes contained in a nucleus play a crucial role during cell division. Now this cell division is a very important phenomenon to understand. It is not very simple how the way cell divides. You understand what is cell division? Cell division means that, let us suppose you have one cell A. Let us suppose this is cell A. So this cell can divide to form two cells, A1 and A2. Again, each of these cells can divide to form more cells. Now it is not as simple as it looks like. So there are many different ways in which cells actually divide. So in this cell division, chromosomes play a very crucial role. So not only that, the genes present inside chromosome, because chromosome is made up of DNA and proteins, and DNA consists of segments known as genes. So these genes present inside chromosomes decide the hereditary characters. Right? So that is why you can understand why nucleus is known as brain of the cell, because of its significant role in cellular reproduction and movement of substances through nuclear pores from nucleolus to cytoplasm. Right? Okay. Now we will study about cell division in class 11. As I said, there might arise many questions in your mind for many different things, because this is a lesson which is not very simple, because you get introduced to many new terms. At the same time, we do not give you much details on everything, because if I start giving you details, it will be like too much at your level. Right? So we will understand cell division in detail in class 11. Now if you are clear with the basic concepts of the structure of a cell in class 9, it will be very easier for you to understand the advanced structure of a cell in your class 11. Thank you. Please visit examfear.com to watch free educational videos, try free online tests, get the best quality study materials, study from the best tutors and mentors, and much more. Thank you once again.